Okay, this is the second part of the tutorial. What I want to do quickly is to go through some of the HTML, XHTML terms using coding. These are the basic coding structures that we're going to use to make up a simple web page. And I use the term now XHTML because there is a new coding structure that can change the way that you code the program. To make your syntax look a little bit different. What I want to try to do is to look at the main HTML terms, and I'll show you the points where they change from HTML to XHTML. I don't want to go into the definitions of why it's changed and all the kind of regulations that's set up by the W3 organization about the structure of HTML and XHTML. I just want to go through the actual syntax, and as we progress through the course I'll show you how and why these things have happened, but at the moment it's just the syntax and how to write them. As I said before, there are open and closed tags. I need to point out at this point that XHTML can allow for non-closed tag operation, and I'll define those when we come to them. But on a whole, and especially with HTML, most tags have an open and closed tag structure, and this is the way you define it. So, setting up a web page would be something similar to this. You'll have your HTML coding, which actually defines a whole page, within which you will get the head section, which I've mentioned last time, and the body section. The structure for this would be something similar to this. So you'd have your HTML at the top and the closed tag at the bottom. The head tag inside, nested inside the HTML, and then the body nested underneath the head section. So they're two completely different areas. The head contains most of the metadata and title structure, and the body contains the design and what actually appears on your website. So looking at the tags in detail, the head section has the title, which is written as such. Okay, and a good example of that would be, say for instance, my web page. You can do several different things using add-ons, JavaScript, etc. to make it scroll, flash, etc. But I tend to find that's bad design rather than good design. So this is a simple minimal structure to actually define a title on your web page using HTML. Then we have a series of things called metadata input lines. This is a list of the sort of things you can look for. Obviously they vary, and I'll show you some actual physical examples of those, which I took from my website. They would be something like this. As you can see, it says the HTTP equivalent. In this case it's the character set UTF-8, which is Unicode. This allows you to use Latin, Greek and Cyrillic typefaces, probably more other on top of that as well. There are definitions for each different character set for different countries, and I can go through those later when we define a web page. Also it says things like the description, keywords which are important for search engines such as Yahoo, and language and robot definitions, as well as things such as the document rating, which can define your classification on certain search engine databases. Okay, these will all be explained later, so these are just definitions at the moment. The head section then also contains link formats such as this. These are your two ways of writing it. The top one being such, which is the new XHTML method, which you'll notice at the end has a space and a /. Okay, you can in HTML write it without that, and it still is a valid link structure. This link is to a style sheet, style CSS, and we'll talk about linking external files later on. As I said, this is just syntax and knowing the actual terms and structure for the writing of the code. Okay, now we move on to the body section, which is where you design your web page. One thing which is used by some people, you tend to find with experienced people, they tend to look at something called a div, which I'm not going to include in this. It's more part of the design aspect of using CSS. You can use div tags without CSS, and we'll do that when we have a quick review of Dreamweaver, but a lot of people and old-fashioned designers tend to still incorporate tables, and they do have some uses, and you'll see many websites on the internet using them, but generally for good designers it's a taboo, but this is the structure anyway, and you would write one like that. I say that because this is going to be starting to have nested elements in part of it, and it can get quite confusing, but basically that's the simple structure of a table. And what you have then is inside your table is two elements. To make life simple, I can call them rows and columns, basically like if you were doing a XLS document and you wanted to make a database table. So you can see it roughly like that. TR stands for table rows, so they're the horizontal lines, and you add as many as you need lines down the table. TD stands for table data. Simply put, these could be the columns on the rows, or they're actually the defined cells where you put the information. And you need to have these in a certain structure, else the table won't work, and it can, depending on how many table cells you have, get very confusing. Okay, this is how you would write it without the table element. So this is just the table rows and data cells, and you'll notice my name, Rob, is sitting inside the table data area. Okay. To put it all together in a table, it would look like this. So you would have your table defining the actual whole element, and then you would have your table rows defining the actual width of your table, and then your table data file inside the rows. And I'll show you later on that this can get more expansive, but you'll notice that they're nested at the moment, and this is the structure by which you would write a table. Right, here we have the starting of the difference between HTML and XHTML. And if you want to put it this way, the old and new way of doing things. I tend to use bold, still B, mainly because if you have lots of information on your table, on your web page, and you're using strong, you've got to think about your file size. This is an important part of web design, and you need to think about each single character of a word equals 1 byte of information. If you have lots of strong coding tags inside your web page, then it becomes a problem because you're talking more bytes than just using the bold. Saying that, strong is the new modern method of actually defining an emboldened piece of text. An example of this would be this. Okay, you can use both still, and they're both valid. Okay, so you can choose which one you want, but more people are starting to turn to use the word strong in their definitions now. Okay, now we have this method of doing italics. This is again the old method. An example of that would be something like that. and I'll just quickly show you the new variation of this, which is the EM tag, like so. And this is how you write it. Same structure, same result. And we also have this one, which is underline, which would cause this effect. Now we have this structure, and I've actually indicated on this example the difference now. The top one being HTML, it is valid, but when you set up a document, especially now in Dreamweaver automatically, it tends to define it as an XHTML document, and if you validate this through the web's validation service, you'll notice if it's an XHTML and you use the top coding structure, it will create errors and warnings about bad syntax. So you have to define which of these two types of web design you're using and make sure you use the right syntax. The main difference being that you have the open space or blank space and the / after the actual definition of a line break, which is BR. Okay, an example of that would be something like this, and you can continue. Like I say, it says Rob Snow break. What it does on the page is it actually puts the next piece of text on a different line, but you can carry on writing the text on the same line and just carry on placing these coding tags wherever you need them to make it so that the text has line breaks whenever you want. Okay. The next one is horizontal rule. Okay, these are the two definitions depending on the mode you're using. And what it does is it basically makes a horizontal rule across your page. I'll show you this when we actually do design. The coding structure looks exactly the same and you can't see anything different really. Okay. P equals paragraph. This is when you define something as a body of text and you want to define space between the next piece of text. I'll show you this when we actually start designing, but this is the actual syntax. And this is how it would appear, but there's not enough text there to show you how an example would work. Okay, but we'll see this later on when I start coding. These are headers, numbered H1 through to H6, and what they do is they define heading structures to a certain size, and I'll show you an example of the extremes. This is header 1, which is very big text, and header 6, which is very small text. You can, and I'll show you this later, define these inside CSS design attributes, and it can make it a little bit more effective. But as a standard default, these are the kind of sizes and formats you would expect from H1 and H6. This is the link structure for HTML. Basically, it's defining a href tag, which is a hypertext link, and it has to be with an equal sign and open quotes. It's slightly different from the one we did in the header section, but an example of this would be a link to my website, for instance, and you'll notice it defines an actual URL. What this does to the actual coding inside the tag area, which is the Rob Snow, is it makes it blue and underlined, which defines a link, which when you click on it will take it to a different website. Okay. This is the simple structure for a linking piece of code, and obviously when we get into the depths of HTML and CSS, I'll show you how to make things a little bit more improved on that one, but this is the defined way of writing a link. So that's basically the simple coding. What I'm going to do next is to give you inside a piece of text editor a simple way of setting up a HTML without using any applications and actually coding it by hand using those terms that we've done. It will be set up as a combination of HTML and XHTML terms, and I'll define those when we're doing it. Okay, so hopefully you'll get to understand this syntax and we'll improve the design later on.